Well, talking about that intervention, it was, I think I've been doing this for about 15 years, and I think it was the hardest one I've ever done in 15 years. I mean, it was so painful working with this client. And, you know, the reason why this show picked to take her to Sovereign Health in Arizona, because it's a women's only trauma-based facility. And I think she needs this, because this young woman, and I'm allowed to talk about it only because it's going to be aired, you know, there's no HIPAA there, but it will be aired. And this woman, it's heartbreaking. When she was 12 years old, she was living with her father, her grandparents, and she was really close to her father. Her mom and dad were divorced, and their father was a soccer coach at school and played soccer with her all the time. They were really, really close. They were like this, daughter and father and daughter. And what happened is she noticed that he started talking to one of her girlfriends, one of her 12-year-old friends, and the father was talking to her, like, you know, on the phone for like 2 hours at a time. And then her parents seen the email that came back that said, he said to her, he goes, send me some dirty pictures, or send me some pictures, you dirty girl, or something like that, inappropriate. And so they, instead of the family pressing charges on the father, they didn't want the young woman, the 12-year-old, or the young girl, to go through that. So they just had him resign from his job and get out of the area. So she lost her father over that. Her best friend and her father she lost. She was not allowed to be around her father. So then what ends up happening is she has a new friend, and everybody shunned her in school. She was really well in school, and everybody started shunning her. She had no friends. So she realized her new friend that she had, her father gave her the interest that her father gave to her friend. So she took that as, she had attachment issues now, so she took that as, oh, this guy loves me, he cares about me. At 13, he ended up raping her. So at 13, she's having a relationship with him until she was 18. And she learned how to use sex to get what she wants. So she learned that if she kept her mouth shut, she could get money, alcohol, drugs, anything she wanted from this guy, so he wouldn't get turned in. So that trauma that she lived in, now she's a prostitute up at Grand Rapids, about an hour out of there. And she's a prostitute, and the family's been trying to help. They don't know what to do. And we do the intervention on her on Monday. And, you know, I'm telling you, like I said, it was the most difficult one I've ever done. You know, we get her to go because what we told her is that, I have to congratulate the producer on this one, because she was like, she's the one that thought of this one, but she said, you know, at the beginning we were like, the dad's going to do a sting, because now the dad's got another family, but he came back in and he admitted to her on camera that he was wrong, and he's apologized, and anything he could do to make it right. And he's going to get treatment and all of that. So, you know, my pre-interventions are 4 to 8 hours long, because I really educate the family on the 5-year plan, the importance of everybody getting help. She didn't just become an addict. I mean, look at all these traumas that happened at her since she was 12 years old. So we get her to the airport, we're doing the intervention, and she goes, I'm not going. So Dad says, okay, I'm going to help set up a sting, you know, because she has a prostitution website, and we're going to have the police come arrest you, and we're going to ask the drug court or the judge to mandate drug court every time you get arrested, so you'll be in there instead of in treatment. And Dr. Sharma's nice place out in Arizona. So she started thinking about it. Well, I don't know. I don't know. Which one sounds money? You know, we have to cut off the money. Where is she going to get the money to pay for her habit, her drug addiction? So we figured out a way to cut that off, to shutting it down. We're going to contact the pimp and let the pimp know, you know, that she was a drug addict and she's going to be followed. So we had a whole plan of action. Then we get to the airport, and this is where it got really difficult. We're all at the airport, and we're sitting waiting for our flight. We get to the gate, and there's a 2-hour delay. So all of a sudden, she changes her mind. I'm not going to treatment. We're like, oh my God, now the whole family's not here, there's no one around. So she starts screaming and yelling in the airport that we're kidnapping. She takes her purse, she throws it in the middle of the ground. There's this woman sitting there, and she's like, what the F are you looking at? So I'm like, oh my God. I was like, you're going to get arrested. So she goes up to the cops come over. She goes up to the cops, and she's like, what, you want to arrest me? And now she's got this street mentality. So she was this beautiful woman, and now she's like 23-year-old, just, really bad, behavioral issues. So she's like, what, you want to arrest me? She goes up to the cop. And the cop's like, no, do you want me to do a sobriety test? I'll do a sobriety test. What do you want me to do? And she's walking up and down in front of everyone's looking at her. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. So then I said, can you arrest her? Because, we don't know what to do. And he's like, really? No, there's nothing to arrest her. Most airports, like, you sneeze wrong and they'll arrest you. In Grand Rapids, they would not arrest her. So I'm like, okay. So then we're sitting there going through, so she finally says, well, okay, I'll go. I'll go, because we got her aunt and her aunt's friend to come to the airport, an hour and a half away. And they're sitting on the floor, and we run to the gate, and we get on the airline, we check our luggage. I think we had to check luggage. We went to 5 different flights through this process that we missed planes, and we got kicked off of the same flight twice because she starts crying and saying they're kidnapping me. And so I said, no, we're doing it. We did an intervention. So the flight attendant says, okay. Then her supervisor comes on and says, what do you guys do? What's going on here? And she goes, do you want to be on this flight? She says, no. So me and the nurse and the camera and the producer, we all have to jump off the flight, one of those little flights, get off again. Wow. So all day it was like that until we got her to the facility. I think it was at 2 o'clock in the morning. We checked her in. And we checked her in, and then it was about her phone. I can't have my phone on. So God bless your staff down there. They were so calm and patient with her. Because so then she throws out her whole purse again in the admission office, right there on the ground. She throws it all out, and she's looking for it through her stuff. And I'm not doing this if I can't have my phone. And she finds a syringe. So she puts water in the syringe, because she used to be a cutter. So it isn't really about getting the high, it's just about sticking the needle in her arm. I was like, we had to do this earlier in the car ride on the way here. I said she'll be calm in about 5 minutes after she does it. And there's nothing, so she just pulls it out and sticks it in her arm, and then all of a sudden she calms down. So we got her calm enough to stay for the night. And then I talked to Mike today, and he said that she's a little bit calmer today. But oh my God, on and off planes, and what a nightmare. And being a part of the show, and this was all for the show, and being a part of the show, I mean, I was walking, anybody watch Shark Tank? Yeah, right. So I was watching it last night, from last week's, the military one. And they talked about, when you find something that's, marketable, something that they could invest in, it's something that you love what you do. It's something, you don't go in there to the thing and say, oh, I'm going to make a lot of money doing this. If you find something that you love what you do, and then fill, John Southwick always says you fill a gap, and you fill it, and then you create it. And that's what I heard from Shark Tank. They said it just last night, I heard it. You fill that gap, you find something that you do. And that's what I realized. I had 10 years sober, and now I have 25 years, so I had 10 years sober before I even started working in the field. And when I started working in the field, it was like, wow, I have an amazing life because of recovery. And I would answer phones at a treatment center, and they would say, what do I do about my spouse? What do I do about my kid? What do I do about my family members? And I was like, oh, intervention. I was like, oh, that's interesting. That would be, I could probably talk them into it. And I would go and I would do a 12-step call. We've all heard about a 12-step call. And I would do a 12-step call, and I was charging $500 to do a 12-step call. And I was realizing that, I was filling that gap, like they said in Shark Tank. I found something that I loved doing, and I didn't even know there was a business in it. I didn't know there was a career in it. I didn't know any of that. I just knew people could have a better life if they got into recovery, and I'm going to do everything possible to get them in that front door like we did the other night. And that's how it all started 15 years ago for me. It wasn't about, I'm going to build a company, I'm going to do this. It was about, I'm going to get as many people in. And then when I learned what I was doing, I was like, oh my God, this would be so powerful if we had 10 interventionists all over the country doing the same thing with the same ethics, and we all work together as a team. And then that's when Intervention 911 came up. And then, I was like, God, this would be so powerful. I don't know, if any of you that watch the show, do you know Donna Shavu, the other interventionist, African-American with dreadlocks? she's a really good friend of ours. She just did one for you guys. She just did an intervention for Wingate. And she's a really good friend of mine. I trained her 15 years ago to do these when we first started, or like 5 years after I was in it, so 10 years ago. And she you know, she's been on the show. And what we do with that is, you know, with the intervention process, is we educate the family system from where we were 15 years ago and where we're at now, is we educate them on this 5-year plan. Because we all work in the industry, and how many of you had a loved one that has cancer, or have you ever had cancer? You know, yeah. So we all know what it is. And my mom had breast cancer. And for everyone, even if you don't know somebody that didn't raise their hand, my mom had breast cancer, and you know, she went through the surgery, she went through the chemo, she went through the whole treatment plan for what she had. And then there was a thing called the 5-year survival rate. How many of you heard of that? Right? We all heard of that. So then she went through that process for 5 years, and in year 3, because she was constantly monitored, in year 3 she got breast cancer on the other side. So she had to go in and get the surgery again and go through the chemo again. But if she wasn't being monitored for those 5 years, she would have never known she got it on the other side. She would have had to grow to a size that she would have had to notice it again, and probably wouldn't be with us today. But because of the treatment protocol that's laid out for cancer, she was able to survive that, and now it's been 10 years that she's been cancer-free. And it's because of that is why the public knows about the 5-year plan, and they understand that it's a 5-year survival rate, and we all know that. In treatment, we don't talk of it that way. We don't talk of it that way. We talk about, oh, you go to treatment and that's it. But the reality is we learn this, where we learned it from is, you know, in the doctor diversion programs. You know, we learn this in the, you know, the evidence-based programs are out there. You know, where are the evidence-based programs? You know, they're out there that we have. You know, the drug court programs, you know, the doctor diversion programs. See, usually do drug court, doctor diversion, airline pilot programs, right? These are the percentages that they all have for all their programs. And what do they have in common? The drug court programs, anybody familiar with them? How long are they here? 18 months. 18 months. Some years, I think Brooklyn it's 2 years, 18 months. So 1 to 2 years or 18 months, 60 to 65% is what their statistics are for long-term, for people that graduate that program and get through it. We go through the doctor diversion programs, and we have a 79% success rate, right? And they're 5 years, aren't they 5 years? The nurses and every state is different, but I think they used to be 3 years. I remember I was dating a doctor in my first 10 years of sobriety. I was dating a doctor, and he lost his license because of drugs, right? And and back then it was really hard to get his license back. I mean, it was really difficult. So here he was making all this money as a doctor down in Laguna Beach, and ended up losing everything, but even had a partnership of a hospital down there. Lost everything, living in a crystal meth hotel in San Diego, then moved up to LA to get sober at the Van Ness House, a free treatment facility. Got sober up there, and we met, and it was 3 years at that time. So back in the early 90s, the doctor diversion program was only 3 years, but what they realized is the doctors were, you know, getting sober, and then after the 3 years and they weren't held accountable, they were getting high again. So they upped it to 5 years. So now the nursing programs, the pharmacist programs, all of them are 5 years, and I think the pilot program right now is 10-year protocol. And if they test once, it was the first time I spoke here with you guys, I met Larry Smith. Any of you know Larry Smith? So Larry's the one that told me that it was 90 to 95% with a 10-year protocol. And if they relapse once in that 10 years, it's the lifetime of their licensure. So we have those statistics right here. They're all right here. You know, they're all evidence-based. They all have random drug testing to prove their evidence. Because you think that court, the drug court, that judge, one of the judges that we work with in Brooklyn, you think she's going to let somebody out free, you know, that's a convicted felon, out on the streets without a urine test? She's not going to let them out free. You think the doctor diversion programs, the licensing boards, are going to let them go practice medicine or, you know, be a pharmacist without random drug testing to prove that they're clean and sober. All of these programs have random drug testing. So that's what they have in common for those 3 to 5, or the 2 to 5 years. So the key components of them is, all of them started off with an intervention. Every one of them started off with an intervention. And I don't care if it's a self-admit into a treatment center or if it's a professional intervention. The only way we get into treatment is through some form of intervention. We felt some discomfort. Something happened in our life that we were like, ooh, that doesn't feel good. Let me call up and see if Sovereign has a bed available. It's the only way we do it. So there was some form of intervention, and it's a motivator, leverage, and then reevaluate. Inpatient treatment, the American Medical Association, they say the norm right now is 90 days of inpatient treatment is what they're recommending. So it's 90 days and then some form of intensive outpatient, ongoing therapy. We all know this, we work in the field. 12-step superior group, some kind of recovery program, and reevaluate. And through all of these, you're reevaluating, except the 12-step that I know of, that's continuing. So everyone, you reevaluate, reevaluate, reevaluate. So in that 5-year plan, if this is a thing of a lifetime, of when we're, get into recovery to the end of our life, this is what it's like. The intervention is only a small piece. Inpatient treatment is only a small piece. Intensive outpatient, sober living, life skills, recovery, the monitoring up to the 5 years, and then the 12-year support group. So this is one that we did on a RAP case. Does anybody know what RAP is for the year-long case management? So the other thing that these people have in contact, or that are related, is the drug court has parole officers and case managers, right? Every one of them. The doctor diversion programs have a case manager, and the airline pilots, they have a case manager. So they all have random drug testing and case managers. What we've done is, and I know a lot of other treatment centers are doing this, and people are starting to do this, but having somebody like, okay, you check into treatment here, or you have a therapist back here at home. An intervention happens of some sort, either a professional or something happened in their life, some kind of crisis that they go into treatment. They leave treatment, they go to a therapist, or they go to IOB, then they go to a therapist, they go to their psychiatrist. They have this whole plan for that 5 years. What the other programs have is their case manager holds the torch. And they say, okay, you did the intervention and you went into inpatient, we referred you here to Sovereign, and now you need to go to IOP. They're going to take those medical records and those diagnoses and give them to their therapist wherever they're going to go. They're going to give them to their psychiatrist. They're going to, if they move around the country, they're going to make sure that that torch is being carried throughout the 5-year plan. And then what happens is the addict, how many times do we hear an addict relapses after their 30 days of treatment? I mean, what are the statistics that you all know? What'd you say, Dad? I heard somebody whisper that.
I'm good.
And that's the reality of it. And the fault is not ours as a treatment industry. The fault is that the insurance carriers, because that's all they're willing to pay. I mean, people just can't afford the rest. And I'll talk about that at the end, because we're starting a program. There's 5 of us, out of Washington. Dr. Barthwell, that worked in the White House. We're all starting a program to get the insurance carriers to start paying for the 5-year plan and paying for intervention. Because, that's why people are dropping like flies, is because they don't have that continuum of care that the doctor diversion programs have and the drug courts have. They don't have it because the insurance is not willing to pay it. So we're going to, and I'll ask if any of you want to help support us in that. We're going to be meeting for 2 to 3 days. And Mike Walsh, anybody that knows Mike Walsh, we're all going to get together, and then we're going to put committees together. And then those committees are going to have each different task to go out there and start lobbying and getting our politicians to know that the importance of a 5-year plan. So if you want to be a part of that, give me your number and let me know that you want to be a part, and we'll start creating those committees. So going back to the RAP program that we call it recovery assistance. So with the RAP program, you know, what we do is we had a case history, and we all have that case histories. I hate doing case histories. We all have our stories. But with the RAP program, we had this young man, you know, 36 years old, an attorney that was pretty successful in his business, and you know, he just couldn't stay sober. His family sent him through numerous treatment facilities all over the country. He just couldn't stay sober. And this one is on the life skills. So it's the wrong one. So I'm going ahead of myself. There it is, the case data. This one was on a 25-year-old guy. So in the RAP program. And I think what we're also missing as an industry is that we aren't getting the families involved at the level they need to be involved. I mean, that shame on us for doing that, because what I'm learning in treatment centers, and especially now that we have our sober living, is the families will be like, oh, well, so-and-so doesn't want to do that. And we're like, well, imagine that 23-year-old girl, what she wants to do. She wants to go back out prostituting in the street, making $800 a day. That's what she wants to do. She's making more than anyone in her family's ever made prostituting. So do we want to listen to what she wants to do, or do we want to help guide her on what's healthy for her to do? And that's what I had to say to her, is say, you know, yeah, for years your family didn't do the right thing, but as of today they're going to start doing the right thing. And that's not acceptable to them anymore. So it's like a 2-year-old walking out in the street. Prostituting is not acceptable to your family, and they're changing as of today. And in that 4 to 8 hours, I'm educating the family system, because so many times the families say, oh, well, so-and-so wanted to go to treatment, so we're going to let them do whatever they want. You know, how many of these drug addicts make good decisions, right? Do you know any of them? And it hit me, and I apologize for any of you clinicians that say you meet them where they're at, and you hold their hand, and when they fall, I mean, I am totally against that. I mean, I say it, I'm sorry for the ones that believe in that stuff. For me, I think it's BS, because how many times does an addict make a good decision? Especially in their first 6 months of sobriety. When do they make a good decision? And it clicked, the light bulb went on. We were sitting in our Sunday morning AA meeting, and it clicked for me, and it was like, everybody you hear says, I stopped doing it my way. You know, they always say, how did you get 90 days? I stopped doing it my way. I started listening to my therapist. I started listening to my sponsor. I started listening to someone else other than myself. So following them and meeting them where they're at is not going to save their lives. And people are dropping like flies because we're meeting them where they're at, and we're not catching them. But if you could gently guide them with love and respect, then we're helping them. You know, then we're helping them really get into recovery. So I just had to throw that one out. But this 25-year-old thought he knew it all. He was in our sober living, and the family signed up with the RAP program. That was a year-long program. And we signed up with them, and we were like, you know, listen, he's really not doing well. He's not active in his program. He's not doing what he, you know, supposed to be doing, getting up, making his bed, you know. He's doing the bare minimum. And the family's like, oh no, he tells us he's doing good. Have you heard that? We're like, well, he's really not doing good. And the family, we were in Palm Springs, and the family's down in San Diego, and he knew where all his drug connections were in San Diego, and he started disappearing in the day. So we're like, you know, we really like to check his mileage on his car, because he's gone all day long. Where's he going? Oh, no, he's fine, his parents tells us. We're like, okay, this is where we fall short in educating the family systems. So then the family goes, they call us up like 2 weeks later, like we did an intervention. All his peers that lived with him said, things aren't right, we know something's not right, we know you're either, you know, giving fake urine, something's not right that what you're doing. So what we need to do is they intervene to try to get him back into their circle. And he's like, screw all of you, I'm doing everything right. We asked the family to participate. Nope, he says he's doing everything right. So one day on his way back from San Diego, he had a little heroin and a little cocaine and a little bit of crystal meth in his car when he got pulled over. So he got arrested with a DUI. And all of a sudden the families are like, oh my God, what can we do? Well, you could have listened to us 2 months ago. instead of letting them spiral out of control. Maybe we could have avoided this arrest. But now that you're willing, if you're willing to do what we recommend, we'll work with you as a family system. So we came in and we educated the family system on the disease concept, educated them on the 5-year plan, that this is not just a quick fix, that this is a process, and we don't measure what they say, we measure what they do. And so they finally picked up on it and they were like, oh my God, we'll do anything now. But you know, if we could educate them, these family systems, while they're in treatment, that this is a process, and I always say, don't believe what they're saying, believe what they're doing in that first 12 months. And the families that do this, we sell the RAP program in a year-long program, because then we reevaluate after the first year. But 90% of them don't need to go to year 2, because really it's for just as much as the family to get strong with healthy boundaries than it is just the addict themselves. So the RAP program is just like that person that carries the torch, telling everybody what's going on through that process. And again, the outcomes, because of what we're doing, you know, how we're working with the family system on keeping them accountable. So all they have to do is, now when he calls up, Mom, I want this, call your case manager, call your advocate, call your, you know, don't ask me for anything else. Everything has to be through the advocate. So it gives them a kind of relief that they're not punishing or they're not rewarding anymore. The life skills, I mean, we do that also. And life skills is more individualized. I would recommend that everybody, you know, has some kind of a program like this, where, you know, like this one was the 36-year-old that was an attorney, but never looked for a job his entire life. Never looked for a job because he went to law school. Then after law school, he got a job where he volunteered and was a clerk. Then he became very successful where he was clerking and where he got a job. And then he got into his addiction and lost everything. And this family went and they put him through, you know, treatment after treatment after treatment. And then he, you know, getting a job at Trader Joe's was the scariest thing he ever had to do his entire life. So we had somebody go with him at 36 years old, sit in the car when he filled out the application and go in there and do that process. So life skills could be as much as that for an educated attorney or an 18-year-old that doesn't know how to do laundry. So it's just meeting them where they're at there and then bringing them through whatever their needs are going to be, you know, to give them that successful recovery. So the intervention process really is about finding motivators. This is one of the processes that I've used. How many of you know that this saying about hitting a rock bottom? Every addict has to hit a rock bottom, right? We all know that. So who could define what a rock bottom is for me? You laugh, what is it?
Oh, no. Homeless. Homeless.
Homeless?
No money, homeless.
No money, homeless? That's
Yeah.
Different for everyone.
It's
different for everyone.
Spiritual bankruptcy.
Spiritual bankruptcy,
Jail or institution.
jail institution, those are all good.
Hopeless.
examples. What's that?
Hopeless.
Hopeless? That's a good one.
Separation.
What's that?
Marriage separation.
Divorce? That's a really good one.
Health problems.
Having kids? Losing the kids, fighting over kids, yeah? So these are all good examples of what a rock bottom is. And when I first started doing it, like I told you, I started doing 12-step calls before I went into interventions. And I was like, you know, asking around. I would go to all these meetings. I still go to a lot of meetings. And hearing a speaker, what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now, I always listen to what happened. What was it that motivated them to get into recovery? These people with long-term recovery. And every single person is completely different. It's like our thumbprint. It's like our thumbprint. You know, if you would tell me to be homeless and be on the street, that would be a drug addict to me. And I used to sell crystal meth, and I used to do crystal meth every day, but I was not a drug addict. Because I did not have a shopping cart on the street and being homeless. So those drug addicts, they're the drug addicts. So for hitting a rock bottom, for me, I could never go that low because that was a real drug addict. But so my rock bottom kept going lower and lower and lower, and everybody's is different. And when I got fired from my job and I couldn't pay my rent anymore and I couldn't pay my utilities anymore, but I knew how to keep my drug addiction alive because I sold a lot of drugs in the club. That kept my beer bill paid and my drug bill paid. but that didn't pay my bills, for my apartment, and then I was gonna be homeless. So that one scared me. But then there's a lot of people that are out there that are homeless, and it doesn't scare them. I went to jail for a DUI, and that scared the crap out of me, but it didn't scare me enough to stop and get into recovery. So some people spend years in jail and it doesn't scare them. So every single person is completely different. So I think this is where, one of the things that we just started also doing in our company that, if you have questions on this, is we do it. Because how many of you are with treatment centers right here today? So a lot of us, great. So how many of you have had AMAs? So everyone raised their hand, right? I'm glad. So we all know what an AMA is, and you guys spend millions of dollars to get that bed filled. It costs millions of dollars every year to get a bed filled. It's not cheap in marketing and getting your name out there and getting your reputation built and all those years of work and work and work. And then you get somebody to come in, we have this short window to get them into treatment, and then all of a sudden they leave. They're like, yep, I'm not staying. And the reason why they're not staying is because they don't have the family support to help them stay. They have the family support saying, oh yeah, whatever you need, oh yeah, you already got it, oh you're fine, you got 2 weeks, that's great, come on honey, you look better. That's their mentality, right? That's these families' mentality. So what we've been doing is anybody familiar with Zoom? Zoom is like a program like Skype, but it's HIPAA compliant. And you could get up to 25 people on a screen like this. And what we do is we do an intervention immediately. So like the minute that you see somebody like waffling, going back and forth, you call the family and say, there's an outside company that I think might be able to help you to convince them to stay. So that's another 3 to 8 hours, 4 to 8 hours of pre-intervention. We get everybody in the family system on there. And I did one recently. And we had the whole family system on the screen, and I'm on the screen, and we went through creating what the motivators are. What is going to be their bottom line? And then when they pulled up, it would be like sitting in this room, and the therapist sat there, and the patient sat there, and then we were all there, and the family was able to go through their bottom lines if he decided to leave. They were like, well, we're going to contact the FAA, and we're going to get your license pulled because you're a pilot. We're going to get your license pulled. We're going to, you're not coming home. We want no contact with you. And all of a sudden, guess what he did? Decided to stay. Because we got the family system on board with these healthy consequences. So finding what the rock bottom is, like I said, is completely different for everyone. What we did is we put together this protocol here that we have brochures also that we could email you if you want a copy of those. But the first one is health. Somebody said their health failed. If something happens to them physically, they code in the emergency room, and then all of a sudden, that could be right, they called your treatment center and checked in, right? They were like, oh my God, I almost died, I need help. When I do an intervention, they've done that numerous times, and that isn't a rock bottom for them. But sometimes for somebody that comes in earlier on, that might be enough for them to be motivated to get some help. Or they got to, assist. I had this guy that had, in his leg, from shooting up in his leg. What is that disease with the fungus that? MRSA, where he almost died from it. And he was 22 years old with this big old gash in his leg. They had to cut out half of his leg. He almost died, but that didn't matter to him. That's not enough. But some people, that's enough, a health rock bottom. So when I ask the family system to write a letter, I ask if there's anything like that they could bring up that could kind of trigger it so they can't go in and say, oh no, that never happened to me. So bringing up examples that happen physically to them. And environmental, the family system is their environment. This is what a real professional intervention is creating that environment to start to only support recovery and not addiction. So you're either going to be on one side or the other. We're not going to be half pregnant here. You're either one or the other, right? You're either going to be one or the other. You're not going to be pregnant. Which one is it? Negative or positive? Which one are you going to work with? So they get that understanding in their mind that, and I open it up, and that's why it takes so many hours, is because I ask the family system, and then I gently point out in a loving way, well, what you did there, that's supporting their disease. And what you did over here, because they'll pick and choose. They'll be like, but I didn't go pick them up that one day. yeah, that was one day. But when you answer the phone the next day, then now you're back over here on this side. So you're jumping back and forth, and they're jumping and chasing you. So it's this vicious circle where you're going back and forth, and nobody's winning. It's a lose-lose all around. So the environment is the key component that we're seeing. We know with this new program we started, where we're saving a lot of the treatment centers with AMAs. So now they're able to stay because of that reason, because we get them on. So the environment is key. And as you mentioned earlier, divorce, So as a divorce, you come home and you're gonna have those divorce papers served to you. We'll just let me know when you're leaving, because we'll just bring them right there for you, so you could have a copy there with you. And guess what? Guess what our attorney's gonna have as ammunition? That you left AMA against medical advice. So that's another great motivator. I love that one as a motivator, separating. A legal rock bottom is, how many addicts do you know out there that haven't broke a law? Right? Come on. Every one of them break a law. Even the alcoholics break laws. We all, that are legal to drink. Everybody, every one of them has broken a law. So we find out what laws they're breaking or what laws they broke. And with this young woman from yesterday, we said, great, you don't want to go to treatment? Well, your family, for all that money that you've robbed them for all the years, they're going to press charges on that. You're prostituting, that's against the law. So we're going to get a sting operation where we're going to have you arrested for prostitution. Heroin, that's illegal too. And the one that the producer used that I love, oh my God, this was the best. She goes, we have all the footage from the last 4 days that we followed you. You have all the footage of all those friends of yours that are shooting up, and you're shooting up with them. If this is a documentary, they can't use that to come after you if it's aired. But if they summons these tapes, we have to turn them over. So if your family pushes you to go to court and they summons, then we lose the show. We can't even air the show. So she's like, what? What? You're not going to air the show? But I think that was the one that really pushed her on the last one when she brought us. I think that's the one, and I love that the producer came up with that one, because it triggered something in her like, oh my God, not only am I going to go to jail, but all of my friends that got on camera that were with me, they're all going to go to jail. And for women, for guys, guys are easier than women to get into treatment. But for women, they don't care about going to jail. They don't care about anything. Their consequences, the only thing that they would do is that if they have a boyfriend, they will protect their boyfriend. That's the only thing that I noticed that works for women. But if she did not have a boyfriend, she had a pimp, and she made more money on her own website, so she didn't even need that. So a legal rock bottom is the one that I always go in for, the gut, because you got to feel that discomfort in here to get them to want to change. And then we go into personal finances. How do they keep their addiction alive financially? What's supporting it? And with her, $800 a day prostitution, and making money, selling drugs, whatever she could do to get the money. So with her, we knew where she was getting the money. So we cut off the family system where they don't give her any more money. We cut off everybody. We go to the employers, and let them know. And a lot of people are like, one of them called me up and she worked at Taco Bell. Oh, isn't that against HIPAA? And I was like, we're working on saving your loved one's life. And you're worried about HIPAA? I was like, there is no HIPAA of a mom going in and telling an employer that your loved one, your child is popping pills or shooting up heroin. There is no HIPAA laws there. They confuse it, where they think that, oh, you have to protect them. Well, the reality is, well, they won't get another job. Well, they don't need to work there at Taco Bell anymore when they get out of treatment. They'll probably be living wherever they went to treatment. So it's really about helping them understand we need to get to where the finances are coming to keep the addiction alive. Because no addiction, I don't know any drug addict out there, I don't care who you are, I don't know any drug addict that's just going to keep feeding somebody drugs without getting something back in return. They're getting their money somewhere. So we cut off the personal finances. One intervention that I did, he was really successful and owned his own company. Well, we were going to go, he owned an ambulance company, and we were going to go to the people that he had contracts with, because the wife and him owned it together. So she was willing to go to every single person that they had a contract with and say, do not give my husband anything. He's a drug addict and alcoholic, And, and if you want to give anything to me, bring it to me, but keep my husband out of it because he's in his full-blown addiction. So now the contracts are going to be shut down. So you shut down the finances. And then somebody mentioned spiritual, right? The spiritual rock bottom. We all have to hit a spiritual rock bottom and plead God for help. But when all of those things are happening, guess who they're asking for help? The more painful that is, they're asking God for help, right? And that's when they hit that rock bottom that they're going to need to hit and get into recovery. So with all those things, I found this easy way to explain it to families to help them understand that without a rock bottom, nobody goes into recovery. I don't know anybody in recovery that they checked in because it's a beautiful day. Right? Who does that? You go into recovery because something bad just happened. So the worse that pain is, the more motivated they are as a patient coming in. Isn't that true? All of you that talk about your treatment centers, that raise their hand. If you have a patient who comes in, the one that felt the most pain is the one that's the most motivated. They're the ones that are like, oh man, this is what I need to do. I need to get in here and do what I'm learn as much as I can. Because the ones that aren't motivated, that are sitting there, oh, they got arrested, and maybe I needed to come here. My lawyer told me it might be a good idea. And they're just sitting there doing their time. And those ones, they never really end up getting it. So, does anybody know Dr. Scott Hamilton from Mississippi? They did a drug summit in Mississippi. And Mississippi was the state that got that stuff off the shelves, where years ago with the making of crystal meth, that was the state that started it. But there was a summit for 900 people. It was police officers, private undercover detectives, there was doctors, there was lawyers, anybody to do with recovery. They all came together and we did this summit. And I was on a panel with Scott, and I was like, and he was like telling me, I was like, I like to call it healthy boundaries, because the families hate the word consequences. They were like, oh, I don't want to hear it that way. And so I always called it healthy boundaries, and Scott's like, you can't call it healthy boundaries, it's consequences. They need consequences. And I was like, oh, okay. The doctor's consequences, and he runs the doctor diversion program in Mississippi. So I was like, I love it. He goes, my doctors need consequences. And he brought up the carrot and the stick. So, we always talk about you need the carrot at the end of that. You need to have that light of hope over here. But if you don't have this stick that's got some form of consequences, like we talked about with the drug courts, with their freedom, we talked about the licensing board getting to keep their license. If we don't have a stick, they're not going to stay in recovery. We have to have a stick. There's a stick on my back right now. If I pick up and relapse today, I lose everything. I lose my company, and I signed over with an attorney that if I don't finish 90 days of inpatient treatment, I have nothing. And then only after the doctors say I didn't just do my time there, that I am back in recovery, I signed everything over to Eric. I don't own anything. Because that stick is what's going to keep me motivated to, even though I don't want to use right now, I hope I have to live the rest of my life without using. I know my disease is right here for the rest of my life, and I need something to keep me on track, because if I relapse, I'm going to go, I'll take everything. I'll just go and say, screw it all. I'll go on an island where I'm going to live a happy life together just doing meth and get paid. That's what my disease tells me anyway. So the reality is that, we all need some kind of consequence. We talked about, the sober living. I really believe, like, we always talk about people when they get out of treatment, a year of sober living. If they go home, sober living at home. If they don't go home or around the treatment center, sober living there. Especially these young adults, there's no reason for them to go anywhere other than sober living. They don't need an apartment by themselves. We just had one that he came to sober living for 30 days, and his IOP clinician said, oh, he's better, he could go to an apartment. I was like, he has 30 days. And so then he went to his apartment, he ended up getting a DUI, so he ended up back in treatment, and now he's back in his apartment. And I was like, this doesn't make sense. So what is this, a circle that you just want to keep the ball going? he needs sober living for a minimum of a year. Why wouldn't you do that? The family would be willing to support that. It's just that the clinicians don't think it's a good idea. He's right. And so that's why if we could all get on the same page and have some form of accountability, I don't care what it is in your community, some form of accountability. And as human beings, we all do better with some form of accountability. It's just who we are as human beings. And these addicts think that, left to their own devices, they could do it their own way. We all need some kind of structure in our lives. It's just who we are. And so keeping them in some form of sober living just helps their chances of getting longer term recovery. We had one guy, we've only had our sober living for 3 years, and we had one guy that just left after almost 3 years. He came from La Paloma out in Tennessee, and he came over and stayed with us after his 30 days. And he was in jail for 10 years. And then he went to treatment, and then he came out and he stayed with us for almost 3 years, and now he's got a condo, he's got a job, he's sponsoring guys, he's doing incredible. But it was because he had that long accountability when he first got out. Life skills, we talked about that. Working with them where they're at, the recovery advocate. So really it's really our responsibility as an industry to work with the family systems and let them know the power that they have. They have the stick. Every family system, I don't care if we're dealing with a 23-year-old like the woman I just did, or if we're dealing with a 56-year-old, married person or single because he's sitting there drinking himself to death, or the oldest intervention I did was an 82-year-old woman in New York City, and her husband just died, and she was drinking herself to death because she was depressed. She was just so depressed that she lost her best friend and her husband, and she was just drinking herself to death, and the family came in and had me intervene on her and get her into treatment to learn how to start over again. But the reality for all of us is if that family system pulled together some strong bottom lines, and without those bottom lines, we don't have a chance in fighting this. If we could get those family systems to put together a bottom line, and these family programs that you all have, we're starting to also do that. We're sending out our people in our team to just educate them, and you have to be delicate. I know you have to be delicate. We're not delicate, they're going to shut us down and say we're all crazy. But you have to be delicate in the way you communicate with them. But we're going out there and working with some of the treatment centers in their family programs that you guys have to be the good guys because they need to trust you as treatment centers and therapists. They need to trust you. But there needs to be somebody that's going to help with the stick. There has to be. The courts have it, it's the judge. The diversion programs have it, it's their licensing board. The families have it, but they don't know they have it until they sit through that 4 to 8 hours of education to help them. Yes, sir.
One of the challenges that I find is that it's the psychological 30-day mark. Somewhere along the line, somebody tells them that after 30 days they're cured. And when they're here in their end of their second week, they're planning their discharge. And at that point, they'll shut off the consensual release information to their families because they're smart and they're manipulative, and the disease is still under control. How do you prevent that? What happens? Is there a way back after they've shut off the consensual release to the families and to whatever their parole agent, their probation officer, but particularly the families? They'll say, well, you can't talk to the family. I rescinded, I revoked your consent to be able to speak to my wife. And then I feel powerless at that point to actually intervene, to try to get them to stay longer, to help them.
With that, when the family calls, because they'll call, right, to check in how they're doing, and you can't call them back, when you say, I can't confirm or deny if they're here, they know what that means, but maybe you should call this number to get some support. Boom. That opens the door where you didn't cross any boundaries, you didn't do anything wrong. So now we get on the phone with them and we say, okay, how are we going to support you in getting them to stay in recovery? Because obviously, I don't know what's going on because I'm not on the release. You're not on the release anymore, so you don't know what's going on. But obviously, something bad is going on right now. So let's work as a team to say, okay, so where they could call you and say, we would like to do a conference, a video conference with you before they leave. And again, you don't need to be on the release for that, then you could go back to the patient and say, your family would like to do a video conference for you before you leave, but now they're prepared. Does that make sense?
How can I inform them that I know anything about their family if I'm not allowed to respond to them?
Families are allowed to call you
Yes.
and leave you messages, but you're
Oh.
not allowed to give them any information. So
Okay.
they could call you and say,
Uh-huh.
if you did have a person there, I would love to have a conversation, I would love to have a video conference with them. And you're allowed to say, I can't confirm or deny, thank you very much,
But
and
I
hang
can
up
go to
the
the
phone.
patient and say, this person left a voicemail on my, and can I have them listen to the voicemail?
Yeah, yep, and say, I did not tell them that you're here, they're not on the release, but they would like to have a conference, is that okay?
That's terrific.
You don't have to sign a release to have them on a conference, we can do this if it's okay with you.
Okay.
And then you pull up this big screen TV and you sit right next to them and say, and you know, and then the thing I love about it is when I did the last one, the therapist said, you know, it sounds like your family really loved you. You know, and they're like, F them! And I think they're only trying to help you. And you know, but you could leave, but it sounds like it's gonna get pretty horrible out there. You know, it doesn't sound like it's gonna get good. You know, and again, we find what the motivators are with that system that I just showed you. We look for it in the family system. Oh, you stole money from grandma? And we have the bounce check that, you know, they're the check that went through with your signature on it. We're going to the DA, we're letting them know. And we're turning you in, and we're gonna have that waiting for you at the doorstep when you get off the plane or wherever you're coming back to. So you look for those motivators, and then all of a sudden they're like, what the heck happened to my family? And say, you could sit there as a therapist, I don't know, isn't that bad? But it looks pretty scary out there for you. It's a great question. So, and again, most of you know when they're getting ready to pull a release. So the fastest that the quicker you are to see that coming on, the quicker to get the family on board, because then you could still have some kind of conversations with them. And say, hey, just call this 800 number, you know, maybe they could help you. It's a company that, you know, we work with that could help put some boundaries into place to hopefully keep them here. Because now you have the power within you to keep them in the system or in with you.
Shouldn't the family be educated before?
Well, unfortunately, I mean, how do you do that? I mean,
Well, tell them that this might happen so they're prepared.
yeah, I mean, you could, but then you would have to do it on every patient. I mean, it would be great if we did that with every patient.
Like with an intervention, I'm saying that.
Yeah. Oh, with an intervention, everybody is prepared, it's already done, but I'm saying for the AMAs that he was asking about. But if it's an intervention, I mean, that's what mine was an intervention that we did with the family, but we had to do 5 other interventions in that 30 days with that patient. 5 other interventions that we had to get everybody up on that screen and tell them what these consequences were gonna be, and he was primary sight, so it was hard for him to remember and to understand it, and you know, very wealthy, you know, he was up at the canyon, very wealthy, but primary psych, and he just couldn't collect, it wouldn't make sense to him. So the whole family would get back up there and say, we're gonna do this. And then he was like, I don't care, the FAA already knows. And I'm like, oh, shit. Damn it. So then we had to come up with another one. So you always gotta look for the next one that's gonna work to keep them motivated. Yes, sir.
Was it Prop 47 that passed that said the jails are only gonna be taking violent criminals? Is that, does that pose a difference in treatment plan, if you will, for treatment centers to maybe take a different angle now? Because that legal aspect that you're talking about is not such a big threat anymore. And I'll tell you what, I have a text message here from a treatment center in Tucson on my own daughter who didn't show up for her case manager at the airport to go back to treatment. So she's off on the run again.
Yep.
And here's why. Last week in court, she had 4 felonies: possession of heroin, intent to sell,
Yep.
transport heroin,
Yeah.
paraphernalia, and under the influence. All dropped because of Prop 47. And all she had to do was come back December 8th, and then come back 6 months later, and come back 6 months after that, and everything was expunged. And here's her case manager telling me she didn't show up at the airport.
But did you ask the judge to mandate drug court?
No, that was a deal they cut between the attorney and the prosecutor.
See, and what you have to do as a family member is get in between them and say, you need to mandate drug court. My daughter's gonna die, and if you don't mandate drug court,
Yeah.
and she has all these arrests, and they're all drug related, because that happens all the
This is
time.
22-year-old girl, 10 rehabs, one of them here.
Yep. But
Yeah.
there isn't enough, I love
Yeah.
this as an example, and thank you for sharing it, because that wasn't enough for her to hit her rock bottom.
No.
So we have to keep digging and digging and digging, but if you go to a judge, I've never known a judge not mandate drug court if the family asks
Right.
for it.
And drug court does work, and it I'm a graduate of drug court.
Yeah,
Okay, it did work. And it is 18 months unless you screw up, and it can go on for 4 years. But
Exactly.
it does work, it's a great deal, but that legal thing and her attitude of being 22 years old and from South Orange County, and bam, she's on the run again.
and that's what I would be doing, is going to that judge and say, mandate drug court, and pleading with that judge. Because once she's in the drug court system,
Yeah,
then you could work with her parole officer and her case
Yeah.
manager, that if you know she's using, test her tomorrow.
yeah.
And then all of a sudden, if she's testing, then there's another charge.
We were talking to the DA and the attorney prior, not to take up too much time, prior to her going before the judge. This industry, because of Prop 47, is gonna explode. And the footprint for your treatment plan, I think, if I own the treatment center, and I don't, I'm in the sober living part of it, has to change, and it's gonna have to get tougher. That's just my gut feeling.
Yeah. I agree. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if that, given that Prop 47 just passed a week ago, if we're kind of not in a no man's land, where the DAs know they don't want to prosecute like they used to, and they haven't really figured out the guidelines and how they're going to handle it, and that it's just an unfortunate timing thing, and maybe over time they'll figure out, okay, this is what we're doing now. It's drug court. And I don't understand why the judge, somebody didn't mention that, but I could see a DA sitting there saying, well, 2 weeks ago, this would have been a felony rap, and boom, I know exactly what I was going to do. But now it's 2 weeks later, and shoot, I don't know if I try to go that route, it's going to get thrown out. So we're just going to let it go. So maybe it's just an unfortunate timing thing. But I was going to ask about sober living. My understanding is that some of the big insurers, you're talking about the insurers dropping the ball because they're not approving enough benefits. I've been told from a pretty credible source that some of the big insurers are now playing around with or have approved a transitional living benefit. They're going to start paying for sober living because their motivation is obviously, hey, if we can do outpatient and sober living, it's cheaper than inpatient.
Yeah.
And maybe the good news is that extends the amount of treatment. But have you heard anything about that, or what's your
Yeah, I've
thoughts
been
on that?
hearing the same thing, that
Yeah.
they're starting to pay for it, and that's why we're going into Washington, and we're going in. Mark Dunn, do you know Mark Dunn? Anybody know Mark? He's a lobbyist, and he's been working in for our industry for years now. So him and, like I said, Michael Walsh and John Southworth, Andrea Barthwell, and then we have an attorney that used to work for Blue Cross, that would be the one denying the claims. Now, he was there for 10 years, now he sees the benefit, because his wife died of prescription drugs. And he's joining our force to get insurance carriers to start paying for this. So like, we're gonna all come together, and we're gonna put together committees and figure out a game plan. We're gonna come together for 3 days and really make it happen, where that's the only thing that's gonna save these people's lives, is long-term accountability. We have it at the very beginning. We talked about where it is: drug courts, doctor diversion programs, and their pilots program. They're all successful. Why aren't we getting 80% success rates?
Don't you think the face of drug court's gonna change with Proposition 47, because you can't sanction anymore? You used to sanction, put them in jail for a few days. That, they've lost that now.
Yeah.
So you can send me to drug court, I'm not gonna do it, and what are you gonna do to me?
Yeah, I mean, that's,
Yeah.
they're gonna have to figure that one out, the drug courts, what they're gonna have to do with that.
The transitional living, to question on that, because we're looking at that too, the transitional living is gonna be covered if it's a part of the treatment. That's the differentiation between sober living. If you own your sober living and it's part of your treatment plan and your discharge plan, insurance will cover it right now. But if it's not gonna be covered. So it's all basis on the criteria and the state legislation and if it's part of your treatment plan.
No. And that's why I said
Treatment
all
center,
the
not
treatment
treatment plan,
centers,
treatment center.
the treatment centers, put it in your treatment plans. If they don't do it, who cares? As long as it's in their treatment plan, then great, it's a win-win. You might have the chance of saving them because we're gonna get them in accountability for a long period of time. So stick it in there, in their treatment plan. You said earlier, after 2 weeks, they're trying to already talk their way out, right? You were saying that earlier. So after 2 weeks, they're already saying that they're done. But if we tell them from day one, this is a process. This is a 5-year process, just like cancer. You know, this is a medical condition that takes 5 years to get to safe zone. And we're gonna start it off right now in treatment. But the plan is that when we're gonna recommend everybody, in the old days, it was 90 meetings in 90 days, right? It was not part of the treatment plan, 90 meetings in 90 days. So now you write it in, you know, a year of sober living or a year of accountability in some kind of other program, intensive outpatient, something. If you put it in that treatment plan, we're getting a better outcome, is what I'm hearing
Well,
you
that's
say.
a leverage in the insurance too,
Yeah.
because the recidivism and the readmission rate, insurance companies are now looking at that because they're actually spending more.
Exactly.
They're spending more in recidivism than they're paying up front and keeping them out in long term. So that paradigm shift is changing as well.
Yeah, that kid that was in our sober living for
Yeah.
a month and left early, he went back to treatment, another 40 grand.
Yeah.
The insurance had to pay.
Yeah.
So now they paid 80 grand. Which the 80 grand could have went on for 2 years in some form of a sober living, in some form of a, you know, intensive outpatient, and a therapist in the community.
That was our battle with our daughter, that she went to 10 rehabs in less than 15 or 16 months. And we kept telling the insurance company, you're gonna be right back here in 2 days, dishing out another 30 grand. And that's exactly what happened. It went on for 3 years. We've been doing this, and
300,000.
$300,000 minimum. The longest she stayed in any program was 3 months.
Wow.
And that was it. Oh, and it's, yeah, you know, if the insurance administrators or the insurance policy writers that you have on board, if it's medically necessary, you know, you're gonna get your coverage, but you gotta pound on them.
And with these kids that are dying, every single 100 a day, it's medically necessary, period. How much more
Yeah.
how much more evidence do you need to say that it's medically necessary?
Well, I know we had Cal State University Long Beach professor and the Orange County Health Department are working right now on some stats to cover that, to go against the insurance companies in the state of California
Yeah.
to change that law.
Yep,
Yeah, we're already doing the stat collection on that,
love that,
to do a cost justification.
perfect.
We're already up in Sacramento trying to pull those two numbers together.
Perfect, well, let's talk about coming on part of that committee, because then we have more numbers.
When are you
more
having
evidence.
this summer?
The first weekend in December is when we're first coming together and then putting together committees. So anybody that's interested in doing it, give me your number, and then we could brainstorm on where you would fit best. Like, that would be great, having that evidence. You know, that would be, and then we have it, and then we put together committees on who's gonna do what part.
Cal State Law.
Dr. Mohammed, I can't.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and Della Lee Kersey from the Orange County Health Department.
That's great information.
Della Lee Seeker.
And you should be doing the RAP program in your sober living. We could talk about that too. Because that's how we save these young kids, is that sober living is where, you know, we're noticing a lot more people, like, to do an intervention and sell them the year long, it's hard for them to bite off, you know, because it's like, oh no, we heard 30 days, and even though we educate them in that, once they're in sober living, and then we tell them about the RAP program, the year-long program, and then after they relapse is when they say, okay, I'll do it. You know, we catch them at that relapse, and once they relapse, we've already talked about, planted the seed, as they would say, at the very beginning when they first come in, and that's what Stephen's really good at. He plants that seed the minute they walk in, and then I would say 2% say yes at that time, and then the rest say right after they relapse, okay, we understand what you're talking about. And what we've been doing is we're throwing in an intervention with the family system with that year-long case management at that time. So with our sober living, we're getting a lot of people back into treatment, and then having the families where they don't say yes or no anymore, they go through their advocate. Their advocate gets to tell them yes or no. You gotta ask your advocate. I can't answer that question anymore. When I answer that question, it doesn't work. We already tried it and you relapsed.
Yes, we have our own particular type of problem in terms of, we have patients that want to go to Culver City or want to go to Palm Springs, or they want to go to Arizona, or they want to go to San Diego. And we sort of have to intervene either to come here or to send them to another facility as well. So that's a whole other type of intervention.
Yep.
Where we have to deal with their, with all of their resistance to irrational thinking and come up with motivating factors as well.
And if you get the family system back on it, I don't care where you want to go. They have that stick. You want to go where? Okay, you can go there, but as long as, and I'm not saying that they can't make choice. If they're going to be in recovery and they want to go somewhere else to be in recovery, I understand working with them at that level. But most of the time when they're making those type of decisions, it's because they think there's an easier way out there.
Yes.
There's just something easier.
Or it gets out, it's easier in Palm Springs or wherever.
Exactly. So they're just
Becomes an
still in their
epidemic.
thinking.
Everybody wants a transfer train.
But if you have the family system saying, yeah, you could do that when you get 6 months clean. When you get 6 months clean and you made it here, and we'll find a sober living in that area where you could go to after that. So we could negotiate with them at some level, but there needs to be a firm line that the family's holding that stick. Anyone else?
These long-term, the folks that have sober living in the house here, is there a step-down financial program that they're gonna have to put together for longer term? Because some may be at a higher level for those first 3 months, the 90 days. I mean, and
When they
may
get
have
out of
some-
treatment?
Well, they may have some financial concerns if they can get 8 people in their home comfortably,
Yeah.
and they're at, I don't know, 800, 900, 1,000 a month, and now they're looking at staying an extra 9 months, 8 months, 7 months.
Yeah.
They're gonna have to consider how to do that.
A lot of them learn how to pay for it. They get jobs in the community while they're in sober living,
Okay,
so they can contribute to that.
okay, that's part of their,
Yeah. Learning how to live in
Their
recovery.
transition.
So they'd have to pay their rent somewhere anyway,
okay,
right? They're gonna have to pay somewhere wherever they're gonna live. Like that condo is a lot more expensive than,
$500 rooms and,
Yeah.
okay.
so there's ways to work with them, paying something wherever they're living. But that condo is a lot more expensive. That kid that just got a DUI, that condo is a lot more expensive than the sober living was. We had one guy, he bought his son a condo. Paid for a condo in Palm Springs because he was better.
Just in 30 days, I'll buy you a condo.
Yeah.
We had one family member here at one of the churches, actually, we are working on a program of having the families actually hidden and pay for the clients.
Yep.
And we actually have community businesses that'll take them on. So we're doing a whole life skills training where
Nice.
the mother actually paid her son's $10 an hour wage behind the scenes. He's 6 years sober and he still doesn't know that she was paying it all. And he works here in San Clemente, and this whole thing was for him to get a sense of accountability. And we just put the business together, paid his wages, and I was just talking to Mom last week, and she says, I still don't know if I want to really bring this up to him, the fact that I was paying for him. But that's that whole family support, they would like to do anything, so they actually were paying for his living expenses and his wages behind the scenes.
Love
And it
that.
helped in his long-term recovery.
That's a good one, Stephen.
And then, we worked with the communities and those businesses to bring that together.
Work. That's a great one.
That's a lot of the community businesses really like that, the local communities.
Did the show start up again?
Yeah, the show just got picked up again.
I heard that, but I don't know.
It's gonna be, I think it's gonna be on Lifetime.
It's Lifetime.
And, because A&E owns Lifetime and the Discovery Channel, they own all of them. But, they just transferred it over. I guess the reruns did so well on there, so they just bought 15 episodes or something like that. And if they do well, they'll probably just keep going again for years. But, oh my God, this was the funniest part. I'll end with this. As we're running through the airport, I was like, because I was playing bad cop, and I'm like, I think you should just go to jail. This is BS. I can't believe if the PJ was the producer, and PJ's like, no, Ken, calm down. We could help her. We could still help her. And so we're running through the airport, and then she calls me up and she goes, are you still with her? Because we lost each other because she's so quick and keep on with her. So she's like, are you with her? And I was like, yes, I'm with her. She goes, honey, all I have to say is this is it. So thank you all for coming out today. Appreciate it.